Hello and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for Bay Creek Tennis Camp. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the director of this film, Michele Meek. Michele Meek is an award-winning director slash writer who's based in Providence, Rhode Island. Her films have screened at the Institute of Contemporary Art, Brown University's Art Institute, the Anthology Film Archives, as well as festivals around the country and events in schools across the world. We are so pleased and so fortunate to have with us today Michele Meek. Hello, Michele, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure to have you as well, too. Uh, Bay Creek Tennis Camp. Very delightful film. Uh, it's a film that sparks a lot of conversation. So did this film, tell us how this film came about. Did it grow from a conversation or is it based on a personal experience?
So, as a parent of two kids who have both had to navigate gendered sports when they both are more gender bending, has been challenging. And it's something we've talked a lot about as a family. And the idea for this film came out of some of those conversations and thinking about how can we illuminate this topic in a way that's more child-centered and friendly and authentic, but also just more of a conversation starter. And I had this idea of something about a tennis camp. And so actually my kids and I, we started kind of brainstorming thoughts on what might take place. And then as a family, my husband and I and the kids all met and we started kind of thinking through plots. And so that's really how it started, it came to be.
Oh, great. So you thought about some plots and you decided to use tennis as a backdrop to help get across your point. Tell us about why you decided to use tennis.
That's a good question. I'm not sure I have a great answer to that. My younger child does hockey, ice hockey, which is the very gendered sport. And it gets to the point where when the it splits, it's more difficult to navigate because the rules for boys is different than the rules for girls. And I think that to me, it was an example of how we even categorize sports by gender that really don't seem to have a lot of reason to be categorized that way for children. And I think that it's important to kind of start having those conversations about what other ways might we categorize children to play sports, because I think there's a lot of attention in the media that focuses on trans and non-binary kids as the problem, and that they're not the problem. The sort of institution of how children are being split is the problem. And so I think it's hard to have these kinds of conversations because, like Coach Charlie is saying repeatedly in the film, sort of, we've always done it this way. And I think a lot of people would answer, we've always done it this way. And that's true, but that doesn't mean that that's always how we have to continue doing it or that it's the right way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, people are set in their ways and they don't realize they need to, adapt because people are constantly changing and situations are constantly changing. Um, one thing I thought you might have added, I can just add this too, like, tennis is, is a sport in which people all ages and all genders, can play and with each other as well too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
a very inclusive sport. So good
Mm-hmm.
job at selecting that as
Mm-hmm.
a backdrop as well too. Let's talk about the characters in the film, the development. Of course, Coach Charlie and the campers. Uh, and Coach Charlie came off as, sort of clueless, set in his ways, and took it from the viewpoint in which he was almost like the antagonist, but still he was kind of like not clued in. Talk about why you took it from that point of view as having him as the one not clued in as opposed to maybe doing it a different way?
Hmm. I think there's a couple of reasons that the characters came together the way that they did. One of the things that was extremely conscious in the film is not to make the children the antagonists to each other, because there's a lot of films that depict kids bullying other kids, and I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but we wanted to really highlight an issue of the adults being the problem, not the kids being the problem. So that's the first thing. But I also think that I've personally noticed, and so have the kids, that a lot of times the adults are not necessarily have bad intentions, but they are a little bit clueless, or they're just not aware of why this issue is important to the young people that they're working with. And so making Coach Charlie more likable in the sense that he's the kind of coach that you really might enjoy having as a coach, and yet he's not able to relate on this level of why the kids don't want to be split by gender anymore. And that disconnect provides a way for us to say, like, okay, let's work with the people who are not getting it but are not bad intentioned, because those are the folks that actually we have some hope with. And so I think that seemed like the right kind of spin for the story.
And also to add to the spin, you had the, I guess, became a running line in the film, go to the nurse when Coach Charles says, I
Right.
need to go to the nurse as well. Too. That was just a really brilliant way to try to sum up things, that he's the one
Hmm.
that needs the to be checked out and check
Right.
himself.
He needs a timeout.
Exactly. So too. Let's get more into the production of it. Assembling the cast. Did you hold auditions, or did you actually know the cast members? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So the cast started with my two kids, which are the kids who played Drew, and the assistant coach, Reagan. And so we started there. And for Coach Charlie, I knew Paul from other parts he had played in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And I mean, he's an actor who's played in a lot of roles. And since I knew him and I just imagined him in this part, I reached out actually directly to him. So there was no audition. For the kids, what I ended up doing is my younger one, Chase, who plays Drew, um, we did kind of a call for our friends of Chase, and asked them all to come to the, like, for a reading of the film. And in that reading, I had them do different parts. So I would switch it up, and then different people would read different roles. And then at the end, I had them write down what gender they were interested in playing and what their, top part was. And not everyone got their top choice, but I made sure that they were put, according to genders that they had preferred. And then, so it really became very, I think, and then some of the extras were cast through extended community of folks that I know, and the youth. And so it was really, the one thing that was sort of great about that is that the kids all knew each other, or most of them did. And so it created a real sense of comfort and camaraderie on set that I think would have been hard to replicate on a very short set. We didn't have a lot of time to film. So I think that was actually turned into a real benefit. Of course, the disadvantage is always working with actors who don't have a lot of experience making films. But in I've found that kids can be really authentic, actually, because they are sort of primed to play pretend. And so you can evoke that with them, I think, more easily than a group of adults, for instance, who have not, done acting before. So
Wow, that's really interesting, because I did notice the camaraderie amongst the cast members. I was wondering how you made them gel, but it does help that they all knew each other. So,
mhm.
so the cast, when they saw the film, I mean, I'm sure this did a lot for them because they're not all aspiring actors, but to see themselves
Hmm.
on the screen, can you tell us about the response from your cast members after seeing the film?
Yeah, I mean it's amazing to see, I mean, one of the first things that happened is just being on set because, a couple of them were like, we shot this scene already. And it's like, yeah, we did, but now we need to like do close-ups or we need to do it from a different angle or, someone else's perspective. And so it was illuminating for them and demystifying, I think, about how media is made, that the scenes weren't shot in order and that we had to go and do things over and over again, um and and then the just we had a film festival screening in Rhode Island. That was the first screening, was the Oscar qualifying Rhode Island International Film Festival, and that was very exciting. And a lot of the cast came out for that. And it just, it's a fun thing to always see yourself. And parents came, and we also hosted another screening at Brown for folks who didn't make that. And so a lot of people came to that as well. And, it's fun for family and friends to see them on screen. And yeah, it's super exciting for all of them.
I bet that was. So, in terms of filming, how many days did it take to film it, and how did you work out to have such great weather?
That was luck. Um, there's always a little bit of luck. But, I worked with a production company, Animus Studios, who came on as a partner, and they were completely instrumental in helping me actually accomplish the film with the production quality that we had. They brought a red camera, and they just really know what they're doing, how to use it, how to use everything. And we only shot for 2 days. And originally the script was a little bit longer. We had a couple of scenes that were like dropping off kids scenes where with the parents actually. And we ultimately decided to cut those to really get to the kind of core part of the plot, and realizing we only had these 2 days to shoot. One thing we realized quickly is that we had the first day, only 2 days, you don't have long to learn your lessons. But with the second day, we ended up doing a lot of the scenes with the groups of kids earlier because we realized they actually got pretty tired. And even though we didn't go, like some independent films, and we were working with kids, so we couldn't really go past like 5 or 6 at night. But even so, once it got to be about 3 o'clock, they were getting very punchy and like harder to control. Like it's just a little chaotic, but we had a great time. They had a great time on set. And I think overall it was a really fun experience, but fast. Yeah.
The fast. Exactly. That was very smart to hire the tech crew, and you can just focus
Mhm.
on, actually directing. Um,
Right.
so after you directed the film, you said you made the decision to cut out the parent scene, dropping off the kids. What other changes did you make and that we did not see in the film?
I think from the script to the actual end film, it's very close to what we intended. I think one of the things that we had some ambivalence about when we were shooting was the scene where Drew ends up alone. And there's kind of animation that depicts how Drew feels isolated in that moment. And we had originally had this idea of maybe like kids going back and forth and the confusion of it, but then when we actually were editing it, we realized that no, it's not about the confusion of that moment, it's about the like loneliness of and feeling unsure of how to act in that moment when you're confronted with this box to put yourself in when you don't feel like you belong in these boxes. um, so I think that was another change that we made.
In the used to use animation in the film, was that always your concept from the beginning, or was that something you decided to add in post?
We had talked about animation from the beginning. So that was something I had thought about. To me, animation, um, first of all, especially in child-centered stories, feels like it adds an element of playfulness and kind of evokes different aspects of emotions. I also had used animation in my last film, Imagine Cola 37, which was also sort of a children's film. And one thing we hadn't quite known if we would do was this thing where we do day one, day two, day three, and use the animation specifically in that way. And that came about because as we were editing it, our editor was even like, wait, what day is it? And so at that point, we had always thought maybe we would do that kind of thing where we had kind of these markers. But then working with Luisa and realizing, okay, even the editor is confused about this, then certainly children watching it would be if we don't clarify this. So we decided to make it super explicit about where we were in time, and so that it made it better to follow the story.
Absolutely. And besides the animation I added, well, one thing I want to add is that the animation, like you said, almost in a way soften, a topic that people may or may not be comfortable talking about. It was more
Mm-hmm.
inviting. And another thing that you did, which was inviting, was like the use of the music at the end. Tell us about how that came about.
So one of the things that I had done was I applied for a couple of different grants, and one of the grants that I applied for was for us to um, create a song for the film. And my older one, Miro, who plays Reagan in the film, the assistant coach, is the one who wrote and performed that end song, Thrive, which is also on Spotify. And in its complete version. Sadly, we couldn't include the full song in the film because the credits are only like, a minute. So we had to have an abbreviated version in the credits. But that's we ended up getting funding from Rhode Island Council on the Arts to create a song, and that was a great experience too, because Miro and I talked about what we wanted to convey. It's not exactly Miro's typical style. They have a more contemporary kind of pop vibe to their music, and this is very much like the ukulele and like a camp kind of vibe. But Miro brought such a sense of humor to the song, and that was such a great, I thought, addition, especially to the end where we leave it on this kind of funny note with Coach, um, getting his time out, so to speak.
I see. Yes, that's a really, really nicely crafted song. Congratulations
Thank you.
on that song. Too. So this film has screened at a number of festivals. And what has that experience been like, including our festival?
hmm It's always, I think, I mean, I can't even describe how thrilling it is to see a film with an audience and see how they respond. I mean, you're making it, and it takes, it took over a year to get the film from start to, yeah, about a year from start to finish, for a 9-minute film. And we were really cranking. So it's a long process. And from the beginning, and being able to see how audience react is just so exciting, and hear people laugh at the moments when you thought, oh yes, I hoped they would think that was funny. I hope they would get that joke, or whatever. And it actually has been very interesting to see where people laugh depending on where I screened it. I remember a screening in Connecticut at the Out Film Connecticut. So it's a queer film festival, and as soon as the coach tried to split the kids by gender, people laughed because they already kind of recognized that as like an absurd idea. And in another setting, people might not laugh at that moment, but they'll laugh later on when like Polly is like kind of pushing against the coach. And she says at one point, like, what do you think this is, 1980s? And a lot of people laugh at that moment. And
Wow.
it's it's a true lie. I've actually heard my kids say that. They sometimes say things like, it's not the 1900s, or they used to when they were little. And like the 1900s, it makes it sound like we're like 1,000 years old. So it's funny.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is funny. Michelle, this has been, it's been such a delight to speak with you about this
Thank
film.
you.
Before I say goodbye to you, can you tell me what's next for you? Is there anything you're working on now and which we can see in the near future?
Sure. Well, people are welcome to find me on my website, michellemeek.com. And I'm working on a documentary, a feature documentary, actually about impermanence, but it's also about ephemeral art. And I'm filming in Italy. It's a totally different film than Bay Creek, but I'm still continuing to do a lot of talks and screenings with Bay Creek Tennis Camp. So I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation. It's obviously a topic that's very personally meaningful to me, and so I hope to continue to use the film for that purpose of being a conversation starter, where we can start having more compassionate conversations, not about like what's going wrong, but like how can we find a path forward that's best for everybody.
Absolutely. Michelle Meek, director of Bay Creek Tennis Camp, thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed our conversation and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about our upcoming film festival, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.